Joining me now is author of international bestsellers, including The Strange Death of Europe, The Madness of Crowds, and his latest book, The War on the West, Douglas Murray. Douglas, thanks for joining us. Let's start with the situation with Joe Biden, whose mental incompetence has become really the laughing stock of the world. Here is an exchange between Fox News reporter Peter Doocy and White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre, where he asks a legitimate question about how a president who needs more sleep, can't do anything after 8 p.m, would handle a national security situation.
Well, he also said he's sharpest before 8 p.m. So, say that the Pentagon at some point picks up an incoming nuke. It's 11 p.m. Who do you call? The First Lady?
He has a team that lets him know of any news that is pertinent and important to the American people. He has someone that is decided, obviously, with his National Security Council on who gets to tell him that news.
Douglas, the best she could say is, well, we've got a whole team, not we would wake the president immediately in the event of a nuke. Has this now gotten to the point where it's dangerous?
It's long past that point, I'm afraid, because the question that is on everybody's lips in America is, who then is running the country? Who exactly is running it? Who's running it after 4 p.m. in the afternoon or whenever it is that we're told that Biden starts to wind down for the day? Are they confident about waking him in the night? Clearly not. Karine Jean-Pierre behaves as ever as if it's just impertinent to ask any question of the Sun King and his court. And it's very troubling. What the American public have seen growing for a long time, and which the Democrat media have had to admit since the catastrophic debate with Trump the other week, is that Biden is not on top of his game, to say the very least. And so where is the direction of the country? Where is the security of the country? And all we get are these sort of miffed and peeved answers from the White House press spokeswoman. And really, these are questions that should be asked. And furthermore, they're questions that should be answered.
Well, absolutely. And following the US presidential debate, it was interesting because you said you don't think an American journalist would be sitting in a cell in Moscow or American hostages in Gaza if the world feared America. Now, the president of the free world is clearly a bumbling mess, makes no sense, not being taken seriously here. This is highly problematic. The world doesn't see the US as a genuine threat.
Well, I mean, there's still plenty to be said about the US and plenty of force in it. It's just that the direction of travel under this president is so extraordinarily unclear. We've seen that. I know we've all been told by the courtiers of the Biden family for years that he's absolutely on top of his game, that he absorbs things so fast and he asks such devastatingly pertinent questions of the people briefing him. But nobody believes that anymore. And if the average swing voter finds that hard to believe and they're inclined to sort of favor the president of the United States, imagine what Vladimir Putin thinks, or the mullahs in Tehran, who are guiding Hamas, or the regime in Qatar, which hosts terrorists whilst pretending to play middleman. It's an extremely worrying situation. As I mentioned in that column in the New York Post, yes, there are American hostages in Gaza, in Moscow, and I don't think that would be the situation if the world recognized that the superpower, America, was something to be fearful of. If that you cannot steal its citizens with impunity. And that lesson, I mean, it was recently said, you probably heard it's been confirmed from other sources, that on the way out of the White House when Trump was trying to negotiate the withdrawal from Afghanistan with the Taliban leaders, that apparently he said, you're not going to touch a single hair on an American service person's head on the way out, or I'll kill you. And then just for emphasis showed the Taliban leader that he had a photograph from the air of the Taliban leader's house. Now, I think that is a suitable way for a strong power to defend its citizens, for democracy to defend its citizens. And it's just night and day difference, that, and I'm afraid that Americans and the rest of the world are learning this.
So just on that then, what should Trump do if he's re-elected? What message does he need to be sending?
Oh, I think on the hostages, the message is extremely clear. It's, you will release the hostages on the first day of my presidency. You better keep them in the best possible condition until then, because if you don't, and you don't release them the day I come back into office, there isn't a tunnel or a bunker deep enough for you to escape from me. That would be the message. And I think that it would be heard.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, look, just on Joe Biden, he spoke at the NATO summit overnight. He started off with some strong words on the Ukraine war.
And we know Putin won't stop at Ukraine, but make no mistake, Ukraine can and will stop Putin.
But then, true to form, he started stumbling.
For 5 additional strategic air defense systems.
I don't know what he said there. And then as he started walking off stage, he clearly had no idea where he was or who he was with. Douglas, this just goes to the point that you were making earlier, that he's not being taken seriously on the world stage. We're talking an important global event, the NATO summit, where the Ukraine war is being discussed, an important discussion, and yet the president doesn't know where he is. He's becoming a joke.
Well, we've had this week the news that he usually gets a briefing that includes, I mean, this is horrible to say, it's so cruel, but he apparently gets these briefings where it shows photographs of how to get to the stage, where the podium is, where to walk on, where to walk off. You can't really pretend that this is a man at the height of his powers or even with any real powers. It's very sad. And I think that, you know, the people who support the Democrats in America or would like to vote against Trump should just reflect on what their instinct is when they see something like that. Do they think this guy has got another 4 years in him? Or do they think, as many of us do, this is cruel of Jill Biden and Hunter Biden and the rest of the family not to be saying to him, step down now, Joe, allow a new generation to come in, leave with some dignity, protect your legacy and pass the baton on. It's cruel that they're not saying that. And there's going to be just more and more of this. And just one other quick thing, you know, the job of the president of the United States is not just to occasionally read an auto cue in front of allies. It is much, much more than that. It is directing policy. It is deciding policy. He does these speeches where he gets sort of angry. He can whip himself up into an anger still sometimes when reading the auto cue. But if he meant what he just said about Ukraine, then why has America not been providing Ukraine with all of the weaponry it's been asking for in this period? Whether you agree with it or not, Biden says, you know, we're gonna stop Vladimir Putin, but then doesn't act on it. I mean, I think these are sort of, it feels like a late empire problem, and I hope it's not.
Well, look, let's hope that it's not. And just on that point, you know, he's got these big photos of how he needs to walk from the stage to the podium. There's reports that White House advisors for more than a year have had to aggressively stage manage his schedule, his movements, his interactions. You know, Douglas, how long can the White House and Jill Biden, as you mentioned, the Biden family, how long can they really keep up this facade if he is to go another term?
No, they can't. They can't. It's perfectly clear, and with every day, they just can't keep it up. I mean, they will for a little time, but the longer they leave it, the more humiliating it's going to be for everybody, not least America. The harder it'll be for the Democrats to find a candidate or a running mate and a candidate who can be introduced to the American public in time for the polls in November. You know, the longer the Bidens leave this, the worse it is for the Bidens, the worse it is for America, and the worse it is for their political party. You know, that's what makes no sense. When your political opponents are running rings around you and ridiculing you, when your rivals on the world stage are mocking you, when your own side is saying, in the name of God, go, and you cling on, there's something cruel about that. There's something very unusual about it, certainly.